You're listening to the Surgeons of Horror podcast.
You did it, goddammit. You just invited us to dinner. Hey, what?
Hello, welcome to the Surgeons of Horror podcast. Its purpose is to dissect and discuss horror films, both old and new. I'm your host and lead surgeon for the podcast series, Saul Muerte, and we are going to be delving into one of the big video nasties of its time, released back in 1980, and it's celebrating 40 years this year since its release. And it's none other than Cannibal Holocaust. And even to this day, it's the words Cannibal Holocaust is met with much taboo. So this is going to be a real interesting one. I personally tend to balk and turn away at some of the video nasties because I do believe that some of them are quite shocking to watch. But does this one also measure up to that kind of standard? Did it deserve to be kind of treated the way it did? And that's part of but that question itself we're going to be trying to answer as we delve into the narrative and discuss the film. And if indeed it does stand strong today, does it resonate with a modern audience or not? Before we do so, I should introduce to my colleague who's joining me for the podcast episode today, and it's none other than Richard Lovegrove. Welcome aboard, Richard.
Hello, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How you going?
Good, sir. Cannibal Holocaust. I always ask this of my colleagues and fellow podcasters as they join me. But were you aware of the film before or not?
Yes. Yes, it's one of those sort of films where you always hear about it, especially because I had an interest in things macabre, I guess you'd say. Like, you hear about the Jack the Ripper sort of stories, and
yes,
and you can't help but watch, CSI or the murder porn things that they have on at night nowadays. So the idea of finding out the reason why people do things was always interesting, and usually ended up in that macabre section. Even if it was not where your intent was, people would lump you in that sort of thing. But yeah, you'd always end up being referred to saying, "Oh, have you heard about this film? It's controversial," thing, because of all of the graphic violence and the unnecessary nature of it and whatnot.
Yeah.
So yes, and seen clips of it. None of the nothing that concentrated on the elements in such a way that the film portrays them in. I didn't realize it was so. Well, we'll get into how extreme it is in such a perspective. But I heard about it and was somewhat interested to see it because I was expecting a documentary, and that's what I think my impression was beforehand. It was like, oh, okay, well, it might be justified in I don't know. I was trying to keep an open mind going into it for whatever's sake, just to try and be a devil's advocate at least.
Sure.
Because I'm a fan of animals. I like animals. One of the reasons why, I'm angry about Edison is because of what happened with, dogs, cats, and elephants.
Yeah. Look, it's an interesting one, and I think that's going to be one of the key parts of our discussion as we go through this one, for sure. And it's probably easy to say that this is not for the faint-hearted. This one, it does push buttons. It does put you out of your comfort zone. And I probably will ask the question of whether that's. I'm not expecting to answer that right now, but during the course, or if not, right at the end of the podcast, is to ask if those directorial choices were merited or not.
Well, yeah, there are so many things to break down with this film and everything that is encompassed with it. So, no, I'm happy with pockets of this. We can spread this out over a little while with a good discussion. But, exactly. That's what I mean. It's the interpretation of it's art and that sort of perspective within it. So whether or not to say it's justified in turning around and saying it. And that's what I mean. Yeah, the term of it's not for the faint-hearted, or it's an extreme film, or whatever. It really is one of those films that I don't think that, like, you know, a lot of people would expect to be as extreme, or as I say, concentrated.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that you really go out of their way to evoke an emotion at certain elements that don't really serve a narrative point to a greater extent.
Yeah.
A lot of cases.
That's right.
So, So
it does feel like it was you know, it feels like it was an experiment for experiment's sake. We're dealing with, I mean, the director is a guy called Ruggero Deodato, Italian director, and I don't know much of his work outside of this film. This was what kind of really was kind of created him, or pioneered him. I mean, like, he did a lot of those kind of like edgy kind of film.
It definitely made him world famous.
Yeah, that's right. And he's
his name out there.
Yeah, and he's but it's a very guerrilla style approach. That's right. I was watching quite a lot.
Which again wasn't his maybe intention, but like obviously low budget films like Blair Witch and things like that are in a I don't know what is it, not a commercial sense, but a movie screen, big screen. There we are, the big screen sort of aspect. You don't usually see it, especially not in the time that it would have been released, to see a film that way. So the shaky aspect, whether or not it was an actual intention to add that chaos to each of those shots, definitely attributes to the mood of the film. As you're saying, it's a guerrilla type film, but it's a guerrilla type I want to use air quotation when I say plot, like, you know, but you know, throughout the film of saying that, like, you know, the shaky cam always adds adrenaline because you feel like it's a point of view. It's a, it's
that's right. I mean, like, and it was the birth of found footage horror films, you know, and like you said, would go on to kind of inspire the Blair Witch Project when that kind of came out. A lot of people have come out to say it's pretty, like, the Blair Witch Project is pretty much a carbon copy of Cannibal Holocaust. Kind of argue that a little bit because it's, to me, they're very different beasts. But
maybe you saw the unrated version, because apparently there is a version out there that has no nudity in it, and so I was imagining how you would cut the film around that. It would probably only be about 20 minutes long, but but again, maybe that's the sort of version they're saying, because you could look at even the plot points of Blair Witch Project and what happens within that. You don't see anything that's, you know, you don't need to see anything. You don't need to see the beast. You don't need to know what's going on, because that's part of the fear and that guerrilla style. They don't know where things are coming from, and that adds to it when you're especially seeing from their perspective. I just got a shot in my mind of spoilers. The last shot of the cameraman in the found footage when he conveniently places it facing his face.
That's right.
You know, stuff like that. It was also script wise very basic, very student film. But
that's right. Because I watched a couple of the extras and, you know, and stuff that was on the DVD that I've got. And I've forgotten the guy's name now. The guy that plays Alan Yates, the director in the film. Gabriel York. Yeah, he was in one of the interview pieces on the, as I said, the DVD I was watching, and like it's interesting because he came into the shoot late. He was basically his agent called him up and said to him, "Are you free for the next 3 weeks?" And he said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Okay, would you be willing to go to South America to shoot for a film?" And he goes, "Yeah." And he goes, "Okay, I need you to just go along to this location now because they're holding an audition." So the guy turns up, and they basically kind of look at him, look at his photo and stuff, and they basically ask him one question. They said, "What size shoes do you wear?" And he said, "Well, I'm about 10." And they go, "Okay, great. Can you go into the other room and we'll deal with you in a minute. And he said that while they were looking at his photo, they were also eyeing off another photo. And he said he presumed he went in there for the next 20 minutes because they were interviewing this other actor. But he ended up getting the part, and it sounded like he got the part because he was literally no joke, filling in the shoes of another actor who was wearing a size 10 because the guy who originally was cast in that role quit. And
when he found out what it was about, or
maybe, I don't know. Don't know the reasons. Like the guy, whether the actor in question who got the part, whether he was just kind of being a bit gentlemanly about it, but he kind of just said he didn't know the reasons why the guy quit. But like he literally said, he turns up, he goes, so they're like, great, you got a job. He has to fly out. And so they're already like 2 weeks into production at this stage. So like he goes out and he basically turns up, he lands, like the location is this remote part, like on the border, literally on, so it's on the Amazon itself. So they were shooting it on location. But it was on the borders of Colombia, Peru, and I want to say Bolivia. Could be wrong with that last one. And so it was a real kind of melting pot of these kind of three kind of locations right on the Amazon. And so there was like a little village. So they had to land on this airport, which was like in the middle of the Amazon itself, and then got chucked onto a boat and then taken further upstream and kind of off the main river. He said at one point he had his hand in the water as it's flowing as it's going along, and whoever his guide was or the boat driver just said, "Yeah, don't do that. We've got sharks in here." And so he was feeling really ill at ease. Goes off the stream for a little bit, so kind of slightly off the main part of the river, as it kind of breaks away. As they're going along, and he literally sees a leg float past, a human leg float past, and I think he said a monkey as well, a dead monkey. And he was just like, "What the hell have I got myself in for?" Turns up on
worst of it.
Turns up on that's right. Turns up on set, and the director's there, and he's just like, "Oh, what a face! Look at this guy's face. I'm going to make you a star." And he realizes that the leg in question that he saw was actually a prosthetic leg, which was part of makeup. It just happened to be kind of floating down the stream because there's this stuff all over the place. But yeah,
good.
It wasn't a real leg.
Speaking of the effects as well, that was really cool. But even just before that actor you were talking about, Carl Gabriel York, was also in Apollo 13. He was just a sim tech number 2.
Yeah, he was. He was.
Yeah, and in Idle Hands as well as a chaperone.
Yes, and he mentions that later on. Yeah,
but the effects for the makeup was very well achieved. So much so that it ended up getting them arrested.
Getting them in hot water, because essentially, you're right. So when they finally got around to screening this, they were supposed to. I think he said originally they were supposed to be premiering it in America, and he said it would have been a very different story had it had its initial release there. But they decided to premiere it in Milan, so it was definitely in Italy, and it got screened, and basically it was a judge who basically just kind of went, "Yep," and all the censors kind of we're pulling that right off now, and yanked it from release. They took the tape, which basically meant he couldn't physically release it in Italy at the time, and they found the content so realistic in there that there are animals that actually get brutally kind of.
There's was it about 5? I think.
Yeah, there's a few scenes where you see, and we'll get to that. And they were actually.
There's 6.
They did actually happen. But also. that he got the four main actors that form the film crew that we follow in the story. He got them to sign a contract before the release to say that because they were kind of like no-named people, he got them to sign a thing to say that they could not be involved in any work for 1 whole year after the release. Because he wanted to stir up this kind of controversy and stuff around it, and right, but because nobody had seen them, people actually thought, and the court included, thought that he had actually killed these four actors. So he had to get them to come out. I think the only guy one guy he got hold of was the main cameraman dude. The other Italian, essentially. And he kind of said, "Look, I need you to come out of the woodwork. I need you to find the other people and come out of the woodwork because they think I've killed you." So he had to break the contract for them and come back. So obviously they got to prove that they were killed. But he did get kind of charged for, I think it was obscenity charges on the animal cruelty component that was in there.
Yeah. I think they might have been overturned. I'm not too sure though.
Yeah.
Or it ended up coming out to nothing. He didn't end up getting punished too hard.
No, I don't think so. No. But yeah, like it's so. I guess that goes to show just how brutal, and I felt that, as I said, I felt that too as I was watching it. It is in your face as you're watching it.
It's even the situations that aren't real. Again, it's concentrated in such a way that it was said by, I think, one of the female actresses and numerous other people who were involved in the court case and things, that they thought it was a snuff film. Yeah, that it was like an exploitation snuff film because of the amount of nudity and sexual acts that take place, whether they be real or not or whatever. Like, even the depiction of one of the first scenes of a man killing his going through a ritualistic ceremony with his wife who had apparently committed adultery, and all of that whole situation, and just the intensity of it, and its particular bias it's obviously presenting, even just from the angles at which it's being shot, whether artistic or not, it's just sort of like extreme. But again, that's whatever, like, as in if it's not, there's consent and everything like that, it's like that way, but it still falls within a very fine line, I guess. It was snuff, or it's definitely showing things that it's wanting to trigger a lot of feelings, so hitting that area. That's exactly right. And look, I feel like we should probably start kind of nutting through the narrative of this. Well, I was just going to say, do you want me to run off the list of the animals that unfortunately... Oh, yeah, do it. Yeah, let's do it, because then we'll... There was 7 animals that were killed in the production because one of the deaths depicting a monkey was shot twice because... that's right. Yes, I heard that. Yes, you're right. You're absolutely right. Yeah. Yes. One of them was a coati. I think that's the right pronunciation, but it was mistaken for a muskrat in the film. It was killed. A large turtle decapitated, and it's ripped apart and eaten. Yeah. Yep. A tarantula, which is killed with a machete cut, sort of diagonally in half. Yes. Cutting through its abdomen and carapace. A boa constrictor, which is not, you think a large snake, but this is only a small one, but it's still honestly constrictor. That one, yeah. And it's also killed with a machete. And a squirrel monkey, which is, it says decapitated with a machete on Wikipedia, but when you watch it, it's definitely not. It's sort of scalped, sort of like, so you can access the brains. Like, yes, exactly, yeah. And lastly, a pig, which was shot in the head with a .22 caliber rifle at point blank range, which was apparently supposed to be done by Gabriel York, I think, but he refused to do it. That's correct. But was still shaken so much when it happens because that he flops his line, and you can see his reaction to that. But it's just it's intensely cruel, and as much as you turn around and you say that there's deaths in the film, I mean, we were watching what was it, Romancing the Stone the other night. Yes, wow. Situation. Yeah, where a snake gets it's a fantastic film, you haven't seen, but Michael Douglas cuts the head off a snake, or kills a snake in it. And for years, I always thought that was real, because you see the snake moving, or at least what appears to be the snake moving in such way it's presented. But apparently that wasn't it, and so it was probably an effect, which is amazing and good on the thing. But even like films with the what was it, arachnophobia, like, you know, they're going through a lot of the things with on-set spiders, making sure that they were protected and weren't harmed in the making of the film. So it's changed a lot, and probably primarily because of a film like this, whether it be a test or whether it be anything like that. Because even in the idea of experiments, we've got was it the guy who was the pioneer of transplants, doing insanely awful things which we would think completely immoral nowadays, by, like, you know, doing putting two heads on a dog and things like this. And it, but it being, again, the pioneer of certain things. I was researching into the idea of mixed breed animals, like asses, mules, donkeys, but also humanzees. A man had a want to try and artificially. He was the father of artificial insemination. So it just gives you the the idea of him, like, you know, they're wanking off a horse and them going, "What are you doing, Terry?" And it's just like, "Oh, what I'm intending to do is to, like, you know, that problem we have with breeding. We can do it this way." But yeah, he was the father of that, and he crossbred a lot of animals and was able to give us a lot of hybrid animals, and was again a discoverer of a lot of problems we now have with cloning and stuff like that, and stem cell research. It's not, but it's similar sort of vein. But So what I was getting with that was experimentation can sometimes be cruel, and again, it's immoral and unnecessary, but it might still be used as a building block. And that's what I mean in terms of, like, even documentary standards. I mean, from the perspective I was going in, I thought it was that, and then to find out, it's mockumentary style. It's the idea of not representing a culture and filming them and just commenting on it. This is them setting up and having people acting out as the villagers and inspiring all of these events to be depicted by actors and props and stop and go events. You know what I mean? It's not at all that way, which not would say if you were to make a film that was purely a documentary with the amount of exploitation of animal cruelty in it, would it justify it and allow it to be okay? But at least it's documentation. At least you can turn around and say, well, it's stock footage, you know, it's not necessarily a feature film that needs to go out there, but it can be research. It can be, you know, that. This is unnecessarily, like, again, we were talking about the large turtle and stuff like that. It's concentration on it with the music and depiction of even the scenario where it's not the cannibalistic natives, quote unquote, which the main white characters are trying to depict, but it's more the idea of them going out of the way, saying, well, we've got to eat, so we're going to get this thing and show you every single process through it, have the woman vomiting as well to show it with this swelling music and stuff like that. So it's grotesque concentration with certain things, I think, was its downfall, to say the least.
Yeah, and it's interesting. It, like, and this is what I was saying this to you off record. But even though we are the podcast itself, we discussed the horror films. I do class myself as a cinephile first and foremost, and I love the art form of film, and because of that and my interest in it, this to me is like such a great case study. Film, and I found myself immersed in it, like as appalled as I was at some of the scenes that I was bearing witness to. I was also fascinated with the journey that we were going through, and like you said, it was like it was a benchmark for things that followed, because this was a point where they were shooting stuff and just getting away with it.
Yes, exactly.
There were no rules around what you can and can't shoot when it came to animal cruelty, and this kind of, you know, they were doing stuff, and then, like, that's when a lot of film creatives and industries were kind of saying, well, we need rules in place. We can't just kind of have people go around shooting this, because what are we, you know, what is art, what is, you know, and what is not. And those big questions that come into play with it. So I was just watching it, kind of really
But even
that side of things. Yeah.
Even I was going to say, just adding to that, not even just the animal cruelty, but the depiction of women and the sexual acts in it are appalling and sort of like, again, the mature content aspect of it. Because I know that America has an interesting rating system, and like, every country's sort of got their own sort of thing. And so a lot of films are trying to be that PG sort of rating. But again, as you say, at this time, there was a lot of films that were all grotesque violence or excessive nudity or like whatever, and there was not a lot of rating systems in place for it. So to be able to put in things that are not only just it's got like because you can get around the swearing aspect or the nudity aspect and still have grotesque violence or depictions of blah blah blah. So the idea of mature content or R-rated material for this specific reason of saying it's for an adult audience only. Over 18. Not that that's necessarily, I don't know, conceivable necessarily thing, but I think when you do have those sort of things, parameters, especially when you're talking about gaming systems, even in Australia, when you say, what can an adult handle? Yeah. And I agree. I was engrossed in it too. Sort of thing of going, I wanted to lend myself as much to the film because it's been made and I've got it in front of me and I'm going to watch it and it's in entirety and everything. I wanted to try and give it as much to what I want, what thought the filmmaker wanted it to be seen as.
Yes, exactly.
Seeing it in all of its bloody, awful glory.
Yes, 100%.
Again, as I was saying, like studying Jack the Ripper and stuff like that, seeing crime scene photos and being able to go, okay, well, where is this? Is going to London and standing in the alley and saying, okay, well, now this is the perspective of where this would have been.
Yeah.
Just, again, it's interesting because you're trying to, again, solve the puzzle or see the mind behind it. So sitting there and being able to try and get engrossed in that. And that's what I mean. Getting swept away by the music, by the cinematography, by the way it's playing out and the long cuts, especially with them in the cinema at the end. And the pauses saying, they're changing reel and the effect of that calm silence being such an impact. It was easy to get engrossed into it. And that's why I think that a lot of people can turn around and say it's justified because it's impacting. And that's an interesting argument to take, but I guess that could be an entire event that you could have a lot of, I'm sure, much smarter people talking about in a philosophy class.
Yeah, that's what. That's exactly right. I'm sure there are scholars out there that have kind of gone into this degree.
And there are events that do pick this apart, where you have, I think, universities, and they'll have lectures where they'll watch the film. My sister down at a university in Melbourne, I think was talking about going to it, but she was like, I don't know if I'll stick around for the film. I was like, it's like justified, especially in a crowd. I don't know. Might turn into more of a Rocky Horror sort of event with people calling out.
It's Cannibal Holocaust sing-along.
Yes, they got the newspapers over their head and the water pistols with red water. I don't know.
I just have an image of the Cannibal musical, the
Trey Parker.
Trey Parker, yeah.
That's great. Let's build a snowman.
Yeah, it is good. I just a couple of things, because you were touching on a few things across that. One of them you were talking about the music, and should probably kind of make note of the guy behind the music, which is a guy called Riz Ottolani, Italian guy again. And he was basically like, when he was given the opportunity to kind of do the music for this, and it sounded like he actually had a very good relationship with the director, which on all accounts it sounds like the actors didn't so much.
And it's easy to see why.
But he did say, like, he deliberately went, he definitely felt like he needed an orchestra, and that's what makes some of the music is incredibly rich, but he also wanted to juxtapose, because the imagery is so kind of in your face and shocking. He wanted the music to kind of juxtapose that. So there's all these kind of real swells of music that's in there, that's kind of like, if you listen to music alone, it's actually pretty beautiful.
It's beautiful, yeah.
Yeah, it's really it's it's a really good soundtrack, and it has that weird effect where, because it's underplayed, to, as I said, juxtaposed against the imagery itself comes across even harsher as a result, and really kind of brings it into the forefront, and makes it even more shocking when you're watching it, which is a testament to Riz's work, really. And the other,
even
go on,
I was just about to say, within that, the juxtaposition of the music with the light and dark, even with comedy and horror being so close entwined, you could easily write a horror and make it a comedy, and vice versa. Those ideas of juxtaposition and the unexpected are the same things that make comedy funny. And that's why I think that it's that idea of even like an uncanny valley that we go into when we're watching it. And so if it's communicated in such an extreme way, people like us, we're sort of amazed but can't look away.
Yeah, that's it. That's exactly right. Exactly. I just found that it was a fascinating journey, and I'm still sitting on it a little bit. I watched it maybe about a week ago before we're having this record now. But the other thing was just about, as you said, the degradation of females in this movie as well. Where, it's a sign of the times, I mean, we're still kind of shifting outside of that, which is very much in that male-centric cinema gaze that we've become accustomed to, but to the extreme end of that
male-centric world.
Yeah. But and we'll touch on the crew that we follow in the narrative in a sec. But there is one token female character called Faye in it, played by Francesca Chiardi, again Italian, and there's a lot of brazen nudity on her part that's in it, and it's done in a way that kind of feels a bit. There's an early shot of her walking around naked, like while she's getting ready and dressed for them to kind of go on their kind of riverboat journey, and it feels awkward. Like, it feels like she's awkward in it. It doesn't feel relaxed at all. And then that is, I guess, echoed more further down at the end. And again, we'll talk through the narrative. But there's one scene where she makes out with the Alan Yates character, played by Gabriel Clark, and he tells it from his point of view. He tells it that they're having this scene, and like they have this sex scene essentially. And he says that beforehand, she basically kind of was trying to get him to go off and have sex in the jungle,
to ease the tension.
Yeah, exactly. Because and he was like, I'm not going to go have sex in the middle of the Amazon. For one, but I'm also, at the time he was with somebody, so he was like, and I'm with someone, I'm not going to be kind of fooling around. So
that's not the job.
Yeah, that's right. He kind of stood his ground and said no. And so when they came to shoot the scene, like in the script, apparently she's meant to pull away from him at first, and kind of try and get away from him. And he said, when they started rolling, she only moved a little bit, like she just didn't pull away, and he just went, okay, that's a bit weird, and didn't, and she just seemed really awkward.
She just sort of goes limp and
that's right. And so he was just like, I'm not really sure what's going on. And like he said, after about the second take or something, or third or take, the director kind of is really shouting at her in Italian. And he goes and takes her off somewhere, has a real big shout at her and stuff. Oh, no, there's a bit before that, sorry. So, like, she's a bit awkward first, and he's the director's saying stuff. And then he pulls Gabrielle aside, the guy, and says, I want you at one point, before you lay her down, I want you to angle her so that her boobs are facing the screen. So he's definitely kind of wanting that kind of gratuitous shot. right? And he, so, you know, Geriel tries to do this, but she's just keeps kind of pulling away and not letting him do it, you know. So
you definitely tell she's uncomfortable and
exactly.
It's against her will.
Yeah, exactly. That's how it comes across. And
she feels obliged it's very uncomfortable.
Yeah, that's right. And so the director actually pulls her aside, had a massiid go at her, and from Gabriel's point of view, he can't speak Italian. That he
yelled at her, I'm assuming you're insinuating?
Yeah.
Had a go at her?
That's right.
Not him too.
And then, when she was back on set, she just, whatever it was said, she just did it. So,
Jesus.
So it kind of shows you the mentality of this director, right? And the animal cruelty stuff, which we'll get to as well a bit more.
No, I was going to say when you said like the token female, I didn't feel like she was a token female, like as in I don't necessarily even know what that really means, I guess, but the idea of because of her disdain for the production, I was waiting for her to, I don't know, I want to say at least survive.
yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Because and here's the other thing too. Like there's some bios on the characters that's on DVD, right? And both Alan Yates, so the two actors that we're talking about, right? So Alan Yates, the guy that plays the director, and the Faye character are listed as animal rights activists as their hobbies. And apparently that's how they met, with a bit of background story. They were.
This is the characters, isn't it?
The characters, yeah.
Yeah.
And so they met kind of on a campaign, and they kind of, fell in love, and they've been together for like 7 or 8 odd years down the track, you know. So they've been together for a solid amount of time. But like the stuff that happens in it, you really question. Hold on, they're animal rights activists? Well, seriously?
Yeah, because again, I say struggle to find a plot, but I guess even from the basic sort of sense, like you could refer it to like a Lord of the Flies. Is that the sort of they're trying to go? These are people, as you say, they're animal rights activists trying to go out there to change the world in such a way that they can show the world again. Like it's a mockumentary, it's not a documentary, but the story is that these are the people trying to go out there and do that to say this is the cruelty out there, so we can change it. You know, as in I felt. Hope that was why they started doing that. Even like in Blair Witch, you've got that idea of the basic thing. We're going to go out and just see the house or these sites and camp, you know, and then it slowly turns into this idea. I really like the idea of there's I think a film theory idea about it where they say, was it these two guys taking her out there to kill her?
Yes,
and if you look at the film without thinking of a supernatural element, very easy to believe that that's what could be taking place in that story, and I love that in films. Like, you know, I'm sure I've mentioned on other podcasts the idea of being able to expand a story beyond what it is, and so I love that and hate that about certain things with like J.K. Rowling, where there's certain things that's like, could this be possible? And she's like, no, yes, something. Only some things, but it's like, you know, then you got Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared, where they say we'll accept everything and they're all right. You know, that openness to that sort of thing, especially if it's art. It's But again, in this sort of case, I can understand again from the perspective of the characters. Whatever you can tell me, whatever. If it was the people turning around and doing that, I would think that they would have refused to do a lot more. But again, you don't know what this guy had over them, and they were in Colombia or in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, that's right. They were.
You really get this sense of that's what they're going for. It's they had an idea of these characters going out there to try and do good, but in turn turned into evil. And as I say, like, you know, I guess the end, who is the real cannibals? It's just like, is man the real enemy? But
spoon feed that in. But in a way, like, I kind of found that an interesting journey in of itself, that they were potentially posing that they went with good intention, but they got so. Because the concept of this is that and it's particularly led by the director character, it's that it's kind of like the Bear Grylls kind of situation where they kind of, you know, put them in a certain situation, and they have to depict that situation as in Bear Grylls' case as a survivalist in a very remote location, and again with the Bear Grylls team, there it's a very kind of set up, orchestrated set of circumstances that they put that put him in, and it's the same kind of thing here, but obviously to the extreme, where
you're right.
Yeah,
never really thought about that. The amount of piss snake jokes that are out there is a very similar thing that's going on with this. But even like I don't want to sort of blaspheme the almighty Steve Irwin, but the idea of a lot of things that he did and obviously did good for the name of Australia, for tourism and for animal preservation, and what his family's still doing is fantastic.
Yes.
But the idea of a lot of the situations where he would pick up snakes and promoting the idea of going either that's okay or that's best for the animal is really like the idea of just going, we can stand back. We got good lenses, guys. We got drones now. Like, we can get into certain places and not have to show certain things. In these ways.
That's exactly right. So it's kind of interesting, like, and they kind of get the idea as this film crew gets so lost in the setup of these scenarios that they become immersed in the events themselves, and like you said, that they in turn become the antagonists of the situation, not the protagonists.
Well, she doesn't. That's what I mean. I was waiting for something to happen. So it's
No, it is. Well, she's the one that's trying to pull him off, and
exactly
that rape scene that happens about 2/3 of the way in. It's kind of like that moment of. It's like. Do you know what it reminds me of? There was a movie that came out early 90s. I want to say called Man Bites Dog, and it's again another found footage horror film or thriller. I again highly recommend it. I'm not a huge fan of found footage horror, but I do recommend this one, and it's basically done from the point of view of the film crew following a serial killer around who lets them film him going around.
Do everything.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And they start off as voyeurs following in, but they end up kind of getting involved in some of the acts and stuff, and then you start kind of questioning like that blurs that line again, and it's a great film. And this kind of reminds me of although obviously Cannibal came beforehand, a very similar thing where the more immersed they get in the role of what they're trying to do to depict a certain lifestyle, the more extreme they become in to get the end result. The director is literally at the end shouting to the other cameraman, just keep rolling. So to what depiction or how far is a person willing to go to capture obscenities on screen? And it's almost, in a sense, mirror image of the actual director of this film, of how far is he willing to go to depict these people in order to capture the stuff on the screen. It's a massive spiral, man. And that's why I keep coming back to. It's such a fascinating film to kind of review. And
surprised to see how accessible it is too. I saw it on YouTube.
Yeah, you said that. Yeah,
I was very surprised to see the whole thing.
So did you catch the director's cut? Was that the one you caught on YouTube, or was it?
I saw it. Well, I want to say I saw everything. I'm pretty sure I did see everything.
Yeah.
Because I didn't feel like anything was cut out. But I haven't. I don't really want to go in and look for it more. But,
no, why would you? Yeah,
exactly. But it's even from the cuts that I saw it. It was hard to watch, because I remember seeing an Australian film that was on, I think, the Aurora channel some late night that I was just up. I can't remember the name. I think it was something like Rebecca's Gift or Rebecca's Game or something like this. It was basically about, I think it was someone like Steve Bisley who comes home, and his wife had a TV set up with his couch and a beer sitting there, and it said like "play me," like the video, and so he sits down and plays the video, and it's her, and she starts saying that she's going to do a sexy dance for him and for him to relax, and so he starts getting into it and everything. Then it just moves on to this sort of really macabre, sort of awful mind game that she's playing or has been playing. Like it's a very slow reveal, but it's just awkward. And again, with these sort of sex scenes, you don't see anything like you see in this. You don't see anything at all. But again, the concentration of how long it lingers and stuff like that says the same sort of thing, and makes that uncomfortable in a very similar way that this does, seeing it all raw. And that's what I mean. You don't need to see anything. Like, you know, as in the best, like, you know, it depends what you're trying to say, I guess, because I guess nudity is something that any artist can obviously use well, because you can use any art model well, you know. But yes, the idea of saying is it necessity to see this? Because I know that was one of the arguments that the director was making, especially when he was saying it was because he was intending for it to be real, like the reality of it. But
yes, that's right.
Again, if it's the most annoying thing was when I found out that it was not a documentary. I think, oh no, what's this? Fuck that shit. Like, you know, even if you're going, oh well, what they had to, like, you know, as in they had to go fishing or they ate whatever, but they didn't have to film it, or you just see it, like, you know, cooked afterwards. Why you have to see every single process of this thing and dragged out with this music, like, you know, all this sort of stuff. Yeah, anyway, it moved me if it works that way.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So look, this is the case. We've been talking a fair bit, and for good reason, on the ins and outs of it. And I'm aware that I don't want the podcast to be too long. So No, don't apologise. I think this is the point, though, isn't it? Because there's so much to unpack with this film. But I just want to try and kind of rush through the plot line a little bit, because we have been kind of talking around certain pockets of it. But let's try and break it down into chunks. Because essentially we've got with the opening, let's say 20 minutes to half an hour is actually, like you said, I came in thinking it was a documentary too, or as in like from that kind of point of view. But we actually get the opening is more of a normal narrative of a sense, where we are aware that there's an American film crew that's disappeared somewhere in the Amazon rainforest, which has become known as the Green Inferno. While they've been filming a documentary about cannibal tribes. And as I said, there's a team of 4 that are involved with this. So we have, as I mentioned, the director, Alan Yates. We've got the girlfriend, as we said, who's Faye Daniels, who's supposed to be the script girl on it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, apparently, yeah. And then we get the 2 cameramen. So we get Mark Tommaso, who's the other Italian dude, and we get Jack Anders, who also the guy that looks like a bit Scandinavian. He's got the blonde hair and the beardy kind of look. And so they've disappeared. So we get this professor guy called Harold Monroe.
Oh yeah,
Harold
on the case.
Played by Robert Kerman. And again, I saw he gives an interview on the DVD that I watched, and he definitely did not have a very good relationship with the director, and apparently was in like literally daily arguments with him during the course of the filming.
Wow.
Like full-blown arguments, apparently. And when you listen to him, he definitely isn't a fan of the film.
Yeah.
And he basically kind of, you know, talks about there's just certain things in it which were just not necessary.
Yes.
From his perspective. And you can tell that he's a man who is a professional in his craft, you know. So and he also went in thinking it was a very different film from what he was expecting and the way it was going to play out. and in going back to the monkey, the infamous monkey scalping moment, he actually wasn't there during the shoot, but was aware that it was going to potentially take place, and he walked away. He said, "I don't want anything to do with this. I think it's wrong." But yeah, obviously they made that decision, went ahead and did it.
Yeah.
So he was very, very kind of clear about his views of the director, shall we say. Anyway, so he plays this professor guy called Harold Monroe, who's an anthropologist, and he's basically hired by this. I think there's like a university to kind of go and find out what's been going on with these people that have disappeared, and because he's an expert in indigenous tribes. He's basically kind of sent to go investigate, and he teams up. There is a few kind of moments where we see like the military at points, don't we, on the scene in happening, where they kind of are doing these raids on the tribes and stuff, the indigenous tribes and stuff, and but he does team up with a couple of two guides.
He's got a good guide. He gets Chaco. He's a good guide. The other four did not get a good guide.
No, they did not. No.
A hopeless guide.
A hopeless guide. We will.
And I'm thinking it's budgetary reasons because, as you say, Harold Monroe has been studying these tribes. He knows probably the areas, the ideas of how to haggle.
Yeah, how to haggle. That's right. Well, that's the other thing. Apparently, the Chaco guide is an expensive guide too, right? And apparently, for the background of it is that Harold Monroe didn't actually want to spend too much money and had already hired a guide, but realised fairly early on that they would need to actually fork out, like when they kind of went out there. So Chaco's very good, and he's renowned for the reason he's good is because he always brings back his people alive. And that's why he's good at his job. And so he has a right-hand man who also goes out and helps him, who I'm just trying to find the character's name, is called Miguel. So there's the two of them, and this Miguel character is very good at speaking the language of the native tribes. So he's almost a bit of a bridge between the two.
The Yanomamo and the Shamatari.
Yeah, well, there's actually three tribes that we get to be introduced with. So the first ones we get to see when they go out there is the local Yacano tribe, and they're a warrior tribe. These guys aren't cannibals, which is really important to stress. But this is the ones that I believe are the ones that we see that ritual initiation that you were talking about at the beginning, where we see a male tribe member kind of pulling the lady out of the kayak and has them tied down and basically inseminates her with a clay.
It looks like a pointed stone, a large pointed stone that sexually violates her in a very grotesque and bloody way that
bleeding.
Is awful.
Yeah, it's horrible. Ant who's another podcast who joins us on these, often talk about how we struggle with torture porn. It's probably the one area we really find hard to watch, and already I'm like squirming in my seat as I'm watching this unfold. It's really, really uncomfortable.
And it's not even something like the Evil Dead remake where you've got something that you know what you're going in for, and you know it's going to be extreme. And that's what I mean, even in the torture porn aspect, I don't think that was necessarily torture porn, but there was definitely situations where they knew how far they could push things, and they definitely went there. But you knew that going in. You knew it was going to be something that was going to turn your stomach. This, again, was sort of really from the idea of a documentary, like again, a world-changing experience. So we've gotten up to the first extreme. No. Before this, I think as well, we saw one of our first deaths, didn't we?
What? So remind me, what death scene are we talking about?
The muskrat. What they say is a muskrat. They say, "Oh, we've got to eat something."
Yeah.
And that, I think, still for me, as cruel and over the top as that the tortoise was, the muskrat's the one that's stuck in my mind.
Okay.
So it's a coati, I think it is.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But coati or whatever. Not too sure.
Yeah.
But yeah. It was around that sort of time as well, because I remember seeing. I thought it was that first. Then I saw the other thing, and I was in that sort of like still in the aftermath, the come down from seeing that. That extremity. Necessary, not needing to see it, to then seeing this, which again you're sort of going, wait a minute, where are we now? Who's this? Because even in remembering it, I'm going back to saying, is this when the 4 people are going through? Is this the found footage bit, or is this the whatever? And again, with the exploitation idea, it was more cruel to turn around and say, even from the perspective of the film was trying to say about these savage natives, was that the white people were sort of going out of the way to sort of now just do it in front of you and to show you the extremes of just their meal. Or again, they do that later on, but it's
No, that's right. There's some point here as well. So like, I'm kind of again, because I'm trying to kind of shuffle through the narrative. But there's a young male kind of person who gets taken hostage, and the military are trying to negotiate with him, I think, from memory, about releasing. Anyway, I'm kind of lost. I'm kind of getting my areas muddled up a bit.
No, I think you're right. I think the military do have him.
Yeah.
And they have to return him to either the Yanomamo or the Shamatari or something like that.
Yeah.
Now, are the Shamatari the tree people?
So hold on, I've got this written down. No. The Shamatari are the swamp people, the river tribe. They're the that have they take they smoke their victims out from the trees. Like there's that scene where you see that body just drop out from the tree because they. So they live in the swamps and in the river. So they are cannibals as well, though. So these are the first cannibals that we kind of come across, but they're not the ones that they're trying. They're not the ones that supposedly have taken the film crew. The ones that have taken the film crew are the Yanomamo, which are the tree people. Yanamo, yeah. As a weird aside, when I was in, let me see, upper primary, I was in the school choir, and we went. We did this big project, like loads of schools did it, teamed together, and it was based on the Yanamo tribe. And all I remember is the one song that went, and it's shit, but it went Yanamo, 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 Mamo, and I was just like. So every time they kept talking about the Yanamo tribe, that just kept going into my head. But yeah, surreal. And an aside. So the Yanamo are the ones that are, I guess, the extreme kind of cannibals within the Amazon. But yeah, we
obviously based on the actual Yanomami people.
Yanomami. But these are the Yanamo and the Shamatari are warring tribes. Yeah. So they hate each other. They attack each other with spoons. And so but we enter that journey within as we discover these people from the perspective of the Shamatari people first, and so they are very kind of standoffish. Like the Chaco guy is basically kind of saying we need to kind of stand back. We can't, we can get led to these people, but we've got to be really careful of our journey. Yeah. So he basically tells the Harold guy that we have to observe these rituals that we see, and one of them being that kind of the earlier scene that we saw. Yeah, with the guy kind of brutally attacking the female member of the tribe. And the Harold guy wants to stop it from happening. He wants to intervene, but the Chucker guy stops it.
Yeah, and he also says too that if they don't, then they would kill him. And
Yes.
again, you sort of go, well, why does that necessarily matter? But I guess it would be, I should imagine in that situation, you're 3 people with 1 or 2 machine guns. It's not the sort of thing that you want to start a tribe against you. Like, as in,
that's
unfortunate and as terrible as that sounds, I can understand that in that situation for those characters.
Yes, that's right.
I think, again, that he's a good guy. I'd listen to him. If you're paying the guy, I don't know, I'd be listening to him.
Yeah.
Point a gun at you as well.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, listen to the guy. So they kind of meet the so then they that's right. So there's like this encounter that happens but between the two, but they basically stop the Shamatari tribe from kind of attacking the smaller group of Yanamo, because there's an encounter that happens. And I think there's a gun sequence, shootout sequence that happens.
Yeah, he shoots some of them.
Yeah, but they basically are turning on the river people to side with the tree people, so because they want to be in on the tree people's, they want to be on their good side essentially.
Yeah,
because they're trying to find out what's happened to the film crew. And that's their avenue in. So then they kind of then start following the Yanamo tribe at this point, as they invite them back to the village, even though they're a little bit suspicious, obviously. And so they're invited back, but they're still not within the inner sanctum. And this doesn't happen until Monroe decides to go for a skinny dip in the river. At which point, all of a sudden, these female tribe members come out, and because his point of view, from a psychological point of view, is that if he's unarmed and
presents himself the same way they do,
they'll accept him. And all of a sudden the female tribes come out, and one of them kind of starts playing with him.
That's it,
with his thing. And he goes running off after them, but then they come across the bodies of
they see like a big sort of shrine type thing with all of their clothes and bones sort of mashed around a crucifixy type thing.
Yes, that's right.
And as well, the film canisters, which before they saw this, I think they saw around a couple of women's neck.
Yes, that's right.
I thought it was like a shaving mirror or something like that, but I thought it was more like the reveal of going, there's a clue to one of the things that our people that we're looking for would have.
Yes.
But then finding out, it's not MacGuffin, but it's the film canisters. The idea of why this guy's here.
Yeah, that's right, and that's what they're after. They're trying to find out what happened to them, and the film canisters the film will help and find out what's going on. Yeah, and
even I think before this, again, the first tribe he sees, they encounter the man who's just wailing his arms up, who he gives the flick knife to.
Yes.
And you're going, what's he trying to communicate? But he goes over to an area where there's smouldering, ashes and burnt bodies, everything like this, and he's wailing and everything like this, and goes into the water and he's wailing towards him. But you don't know why that is. He's sort of doing that, and then it pays off later on because you find out what's happening and the way that they do it.
Yeah, that's right. So that happens at that point too, and is that so?
That's beforehand. That's beforehand. They've got to this second tribe where I think they've found the actual people dead.
But that's right. But he gets really angry at this point, though, doesn't he? Monroe does, because of what they've done, and he has recorded that wailing bit earlier on a tape recorder, and he plays that back. He gets to where the tree people live, and he plays that the wailing back, and so they all kind of come out and they're curious as to what this is, and the kind of head kind of shaman comes out, and he seems excited.
I think that was after he gives him the flick knife, and that sort of accepts them into that tribe. And they're having a sit-down ritual where he's doing some sort of chant, dancing around in a different headdress, and these women are like eating this white mush stuff that then they sort of like spew into a cup that they then give to them. And he records that, I think.
Yes,
I'm
that's
not too sure exactly what it was, because I was like, I don't know when this was supposed to have been recorded, but I assumed it was that bit.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, that's right. So it's from an earlier bit, yeah.
Yeah, because I think it'd be quite scary for them if they heard this guy basically turning around saying, "You killed our fucking people! You burnt them right here, you assholes!" That'd be a weird sort of thing that they would go, "Whoa, this magic man's recorded this terrible thing."
That's it. Yeah, so he plays that, but like, and then we get the Chucko guy kind of basically going, "Well done, you've basically invited us to dinner."
Yeah.
And they're actually kind of made to eat something, which we don't really know what, but it's pretty raw. Yeah.
We assume, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Which, strangely enough, just in a side note, like, I remember when watching The Walking Dead, and you would have a lot of actors having to devour, like, human flesh or what would look like human flesh, and apparently they use pork.
Oh, right.
Yeah, with a lot of like sort of barbecue sauce that sort of looks that sort of color of blood and everything like that.
Yeah.
And just sort of like ribs and that sort of like
Okay.
That's just on a side note. Don't know necessarily if they used to stand in here. I assume they would, because this actor wouldn't probably stand for it.
No, that's right. So they basically kind of are, because they're given the food and stuff, and they kind of treat, like, basically he's able to bargain and he gets the film canisters essentially. So they get what they want, and from that they get back, and then we cut to back into New York where he's with the people that hired him essentially. Yeah. And they basically say, as soon as you went out there, we want to do a documentary based on what happened to these guys and that they went out there. Yeah. And we want you to, it'd be great if you could host it because you went out there and it'd be good to get your kind of perspective. And so he agrees, but he insists on seeing the footage first, the raw footage that was shot, because he's like, I want to see what's happened as well. And so we are watching this point in, like, he's our journey through the narrative, as it were. Yeah. And we're being told it from his perspective as he uncovers this stuff. And then we start watching, they basically say, that's fine, but you need to watch what they did before.
That's it. Yeah. And so they show them this thing with actual executions videos. Yeah, so
it's basically a documentary they supposedly have done before, which is called The Last Road to Hell. And we kind of see, and this is where we get an idea of who these this crew are.
The director is,
that's right. And they are kind of willing to kind of go to the extreme to kind of, as we said, capture stuff on film and manipulate stuff to their advantage as well. And we see all that kind of stuff, so we get an idea of what this crew is like. Then we start following Monroe as he starts kind of going through the recovered footage, and he's with another guy that's helping him kind of go through the stuff as well. And they're following the group as they go through the jungle, and they're in there only for a few days, and that's when we get their guide Felipe, who is bitten by a venomous snake. So he's and
as he's changing his shoes, because he's the one now with the sores, where we saw the other guy, again, it was like fish out of water. That's why he had the boots. But Chucko was a good guide. Yeah. He didn't care for that shit. He keeps his boots on. Because snakes in this fucking bush. He knows that shit.
I don't go out there without my boots on.
Exactly. It's like in Australia. You don't go out in the Australian bush, at least on the coast. Like, there's snakes and shit. There's fucking, like, spiders everywhere in your house, in your clothes.
Yeah, in your undies. And
only if you're a good boy.
Like the spider in my pants. It tickles. So where was it going with that? Far out. The guy gets bitten and they have no choice because of the poisonous snake. And that's where we get the boa constrictor getting chopped up as well. That kind of another death scene with the animal.
Yeah. Well, I guess they can even be sort of, I guess, maybe if you're trying to find out. There was a study, I think, at Columbia University.
Yeah.
They did that of the connection between the post-Vietnam sort of spectre of the war. Like, you know, turning around just saying, is that like the exploitive marketing either within the protesters and how the extremes that they would go to, which, like, you know, that way, but also on the flip side, the idea of exploiting the war for the benefit of the country, or the, like, you know, justification for doing these things too.
Yes, that's right. So then they basically kill the snake, but then they have no choice but to amputate Felipe.
No, this is great.
Amputate his leg.
I thought this is so funny. They do it so high, and again, it was a snake bite.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah.
Yeah. So they chop off his leg, then they cauterize his leg.
They try to.
They fail, and Felipe dies. Essentially.
Yeah, such a bad guy, but also too the rush decision to like, it's not a zombie.
No,
you know.
It's like, quick, chop his leg off.
Yeah, like, do they know exactly what snake it is? They're not the guide. I assume they wouldn't. Like, I don't know. I could be wrong, but even regardless of that, you would know not to chop that high up on a fucking leg. Where is the carotid artery? The femoral artery? I'm not too sure which one, but, like, you know, as in,
that's right.
It's basic stuff.
Schoolboy error.
At least they didn't suck the poison out, I guess.
No.
Which, again, if you don't already know, don't do that. There's far more little cuts and stuff in your mouth that you're going to get poisoned as well.
Yeah, that's right. You have to you bandage them, essentially.
Yeah, you got to try and restrict the flow and calm down. Calming down is the biggest thing.
Just calm the fuck down.
Yeah, just in any situation, just calm the fuck down. That's the first step. Calm the fuck down.
Just calm.
Sometimes,
Have a cup of tea.
Exactly. But surprisingly enough, in anything, it's the body's ability to withstand so many different things is overcome by the idea of us staying calm, even in just a psychological manner. Right. The idea of even holding our breath underneath water, it's not because we have a lack of oxygen that we have to come up because it's the end of how long we can actually stay underwater. It's because we have an actual a CO2 receptor, like, you know, sort of thing that triggers it and turns around and says, no, we're getting poisoned if we stay under here. We have to get out. So it's sort of like a gag reflex that we react to then having to go up and draw that breath in, not necessarily because our body can't withstand staying under there any longer, but because we've got a body alarm that's forcing us to go back up for that.
That's right.
Clean, fresh air. If you have pure oxygen beforehand, it gets more of the CO2 out of your lungs and diaphragm, or already, out of your lungs beforehand. So you got a cleaner sort of thing, and there's less of that carbon dioxide that's going to be actually a thing that sets it off. Yep. So that's why people like, I think is it David Blaine? I'm not sure, the extremist performer who does that. I think he did one underwater and he did one in sort of a hot box, or, you know, different processes that really do come down to the majority of it. Staying calm. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. And obviously I'm not saying that that's the only process that he used or anything like that. I'm not too sure. I haven't really looked into it. But no, even within the idea of anything that people can take away from staying calm in any sort of situation is the best thing for your brain and body, because you don't want to go into shock purely from the idea of you thinking you're going to die like that. That's what I mean. You don't know what kind of snake it is, and even if it is, as you say, keeping it there, constricting the flow, trying to reduce that some sort of way that way. Again, he was the guide. Don't hack the limb off right near his groin.
Yeah, that's it.
So obviously, he bleeds out because, again, they try and cauterize it.
Yeah. They've no idea.
The temperatures that steel would need to be able to close a wound.
That was the other thing too. I was going, really?
And that would send him into shock. If you're going to burn the skin that much, you're probably going to die from the shock and reaction of that burn.
Yeah. And I think this is the point, though, isn't it? It's meant to show you that they really have no clue. They are, like, literally just going into an unknown world and just playing by their own rules, essentially. And there are consequences when you choose to do that. You know, so in that sense, I guess I'm defending the choice.
I do think even in that idea of saying that, like, you know, there's a lot of different interpretations within it. Like, you know, make the film. I don't necessarily feel bad for making it, but I like, the idea of it existing. We're not sitting down and going, oh yeah, and getting off on this. I don't know whether or not I don't care about going into the argument of whether or not it's good for people to do that and justified. But the idea of us sitting here and analyzing it from our perspective, all this podcast really is our opinion about this, is that it's evoked us in such a way that's interested us and kept it in our minds, either for the good or the bad. And it's made us pick it apart to the point of view, the same way as we recently did The Shining, and we looked into that, and we're going into the conspiracies and the theories, all of this behind it, of everything that everyone has said, and listening to them all, because even if there's nothing and it's completely just drivel, you might see a different perspective, or there might be something that you might be able to see within it, again, if it's existent. In this sort of a sense, it's the sort of thing of going, I don't know whether or not it should be restricted. We have rating systems, I feel, for this reason. It's the same as when you have games in Australia and they turn around and say, we've been fighting for an R-restricted rating, and then a game is released in America or Europe, and Australia deems it not suitable enough for adults to make their own decision of whether or not they can see that content. I had to go out of my way, like most sort of extreme things and content in this manner. I know it's probably used to a lot of people in a lighter sort of manner, in the way that we're meaning, because this is an extreme film. And I've seen execution videos, as I said before, in the idea of studying serial killers and crimes and interviews and crime scene photos. So you go out of your way to see these things. And I think that's a good thing, because you have to dig to find gold in the idea of even fact checking. And so it's people who will dive into this sort of stuff will be able to analyze it in a way, and it should only be used for good, and that's why we have things like rating systems. That's why this spurned on the effort to get animal cruelty, stopped in certain films. Like we haven't even gone into the idea of, as you say, like, the time, but not even that, the place, because you would have different standards conflicting all over the shop, and even expectations are very strange. But I was even going to say Milo and Otis, which was a film which was about a cat and a dog. I think it was made a Japanese production, and they had a lot of casualties of those animals, because, again, as you said, you could do anything. These filmmakers can go out there and literally film anything. And in that way, they disguised it, because it obviously wasn't. It wasn't the same sort of film.
No, very much not.
but that's what I mean. In a comparison, is some way they both exist, and it's the idea of saying, in this sort of a case, you should go out of your way to be able to, if you want to see it. It shouldn't be something that it comes up on Channel 9 at 8:30, or even on fucking TV. We're in an age where you can go out of your way to sort of see this. It doesn't necessarily mean that people who you don't want to see it won't be able to see it, but it's going to set precedent. That's the biggest thing that we can really do.
100%. Okay, so at this point, in the context of the narrative, we have we're seeing the film crew chasing after the Yanamo tribe. This is where they kind of come across them. And one of them shoots one of them in the leg, and it's kind of like, when you go hunting for deer, you kind of you shoot one, and then you can kind of follow, or you main one, so then you follow that one back to where they kind of live, is the whole point. And so that's where they're able to track him back to the village. And when they get to the village, this is where they kind of come in. They just kind of run riot, essentially. But we get that bit where they arrive and they shoot the pig that's attached to the it's a pet pig. They've got it there as a
That's right. Yeah, it's their own pig.
Yes, it's their pig, and so they go in and they shoot it. And this goes back to what you said originally in the script. This was the director was the one that was supposed to shoot the pig. And Gabriel basically turned around and said to the actual director, said, "Wait, what are you expecting me to do? I'm not just going to shoot an actual pig. I'm not going to do that." And apparently, within a heartbeat, the director turned to the other Italian actor and went, okay, so you need to go shoot the pig. So he just changed it up, and the guy just went, oh, okay, and didn't really think much of it, and shoots the pig point blank.
And as little as this is, and the grotesque things that happen in this, he kicks the pig twice. Again, if you're going to shoot something, again, I eat meat. I understand the idea of this.
Yeah.
We want to do things as painless as possible. The idea of, as we were talking about shock before, shock's a good thing because it makes us disguise the pain. Like, in this, it's cruel.
Yeah, it is cruel. That's right. It's cruel. And when we come back to the film, so obviously, as we said, Monroe, the professor guy, is the one that's watching this stuff, and we do see the film crew burning down this hut essentially, and there's the tribe members are inside this hut.
Yeah,
and apparently in the filming of this sequence, they had these natives inside this burning hut as it's happened, and they just kept keeping them in there and just going, all right, one by one, letting them go out. You see them kind of running out one by one, and
I see that, how they go to run out, and then they're being told to go back in by someone who isn't the cameraman, who isn't the other director on set, who's lighting the fires.
Yes,
somebody else, and that's you go. These actors weren't prepared for this. They didn't sign up. This sort of stuff we have now.
No, and again, I'm being told this from the point of view of Gabriel, who plays Alan in it. But he's basically just saying at some point he was just, because he was starting to fear for his life. He said during the filming of this, he constantly went around with his passport and his money in case, because he was starting to think, am I in a snuff film? Am I going to get killed in it? And, so he wanted to be in a position to hightail it, which realistically, he kind of, looking back at it, he goes, there's no way he would have been able to escape. He was in the middle of buttfuck nowhere.
Exactly.
So, but it was peace of mind to have that stuff on him. And so he's watching this scene unfold and just going, they're going to kill these people in this burning hut. But like he said, everyone got out and they were safe, but he was concerned for their welfare.
Absolutely, it's unreasonable in any regard.
So and weirdly, in the narrative of the film, so the Harold Monroe has witnessed this captured footage, and he equally is disgusted by the actions of this film crew, and he basically lets the people that hired him know. He's like, this is outrageous the way they're treating these natives. It's barbarous. Barbaric, I should say. And he said, but they kind of ignore him and just say, just keep doing your job. And he basically goes and watches the rest of the footage, and then he goes back to the station and kind of just the executives and just says, it's disgusting what they do, and they're kind of still ignoring him. And he goes, okay, right, you need to watch this footage, the unedited footage that he's watched. And he basically, the last two reels. And this is where we're in. The rest of the film is them watching it in this little screening room. It's a woman and a man who are, the executives that are agree to watch this stuff unfold, and we see the climax of what happens to this film crew and to the extremes that they go to. Which essentially is we see they basically capture this girl from the Yanomamo tribe, and the men of the group, so there's the three guys, basically take it in turns and force themselves on her and rape her. The Faye character is trying to protest and stop them from doing it, and they just.
Well, she starts even by saying, why are you filming this?
Yeah.
And even the director, or the person who's behind the camera, I think was just a blonde guy, says, do you want me to keep filming this? And he says, that's a stupid question. And I'm like, again, are you telling him to then, I don't care about it? But again, it get this idea of they're grotesquely trying to get it on film, because then he stops and the other guy jumps in and he takes the go of the camera and continues to film.
Yeah, and continues to film it. That's right. Yeah,
And that's when she continues her protest and gets thrown to the ground.
yeah.
Which again, at this sort of you're going, I don't know how far they're going to take this. I thought it was going to be a situation where they then raped her. I thought it was
that was the way
worse.
the treatment of her like is of the the Faye character in that is very much paramount as to the attitudes of the male characters within the film.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, even just in a comparison of seeing Black Christmas recently, like as in this, like in that sort of thing, this is so hardcore evoking in that sort of way. I don't think anyone would see this, even the I don't know. Worst male, I don't know, you'd think would have a heart. So, like, seeing the plight of this and going, that's fucked.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No.
Not. Maybe that's why we have such assholes in the world.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah. No, it's interesting, and this in harrowing of itself as well. It's told from the
I wouldn't say empowering because again, it's very obvious that the consent of that female actress is she would have felt 10 times more uncomfortable in those situations of going, I feel like I'm going to die, or I feel like I'm not going to make it out of here alive.
Yeah.
Like, as in even if you had to go to South America, the first thing that you're thinking of, shots. I don't want to get a bad parasite. And in this, you're going, well, these filmmakers are fucking nuts.
Yes.
As you said, setting fire to tents with other performers in it. Like,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Really. It is.
That's what I mean. This is where it starts to sort of put it into a perspective of how he's trying to show them his ideals of saying it's too much.
Yeah.
And trying to show the executives again that sort of like idea of going, well, the buck stops with the big dollars. It's really the Disney bucks that's sort of doing everything. And so when you call the mouse in to actually turn around and say, no, this is what the new Star Wars film looks like, you'd hope they'd pull it.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. It's interesting. And in that scene as well, like so as you said, the three men take it in turns to rape this woman. And because I watched the account told from Gabrielle's point of view, the guy that plays the director, Alan, and he said, so he's the third person that comes in, and he says we're supposed to be kind of holding this girl down, and he says the way where it's shot, the location of it's shot, it's quite a swampy area.
Yeah, it's in a mud flat.
Yeah, but it isn't at first, but there's a lot of water there. And he said, and he's the last person that dives in, and by the time that happens, the mud, it's just turned up all the mud, and he said, like, he's got his pants down, going in to rape the girl, and he said the mud's just getting into his pants, and he was just not only disgusted with the act that he's trying to portray within the film, but like feeling like all this mud and stuff seeping all over him, and where he actually pushes the Faye character to one side. He said he was so angry he literally picks her up and throws her.
Yeah,
I think because of the situation he was in, and the way and that's what's in the shot too. That stays in the shot. It's captured, but that very act in of itself kind of highlights the male empowerment of that scene. It just really
how he throws the female actress aside.
Yeah, it's really quite adds to that how hard it is to watch this moment unfold. And then they then kind of come across the same girl later on, and she's impaled on this wooden pole by the river.
Yeah, so this was also one of the sequences that in the court case was one of the major things of evidence that they were using of saying that this woman was killed too. And one of the ways that they achieved this was with a bicycle seat. They had her sitting on a bicycle seat, and then the rest of the prop coming out of the top. And again, because of that shaky cam, it disguises a lot of the sort of things that if it was locked off, you'd be able to see. Yeah,
that's right. And,
but very convincing.
It was incredibly convincing, and it's like, and again, I'm telling from the words of Gabriel, the actor, and he was saying how when he first saw that, he wasn't actually quite sure. He didn't get it at first what it was, what the shot was, and then it suddenly kind of hit him. It's like, oh, okay, all right. And it was the point where the actress popped the top part in her mouth, so it's protruding up, and he could see what it was supposed to depict at that point.
Yeah,
he was like, oh wow, okay, this is pretty full on.
Yeah.
And so they
come across it and they sort of go back into their action mode, where it's obvious that they're sort of portraying now characters of how they want to make this in the story of the film, this documentary that they're making to appear, by then saying these savages have done this to this woman and pulled her up in this way. And they claim that it was because of her loss of virginity or again
that's right.
At this, like, you know, what was, I don't know, when that happened, and the look that the actress gives to the guy, which is it's a great, I don't want to give a lot of compliments to it, but the idea of it's a good reaction that happens there, because you really feel her disdain for everything that's happening both in the production and towards that character.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But again, that slight jab almost of, I can't remember that film with Jodie Foster where it's about the rape case on the pinball machine.
Yeah.
Well, you're wearing a mini skirt, and this sort of idea of well, you are wearing something that sort of boys will be boys, you know, that sort of stuff. That
So The Accused is the name of the film you're talking about.
There's so much, even if that wasn't what the intention was, and you want to take away from just saying that, it communicated a lot of that, as you say, toxic masculinity or that sort of approach to it.
Yeah,
it even goes down to the idea of the incredible artistry of the makeup and when the guy's penis gets cut off, and I was just like, whoa, how the fuck did they do that?
Yeah, I still don't know how they did that.
No.
Yeah, no, it's really fun.
I have to find out, like Tom Savini, how the fuck they did that.
Yeah. So we're at the extreme ends of what mankind can do at this point, and what's being depicted here. So essentially, as we said, the woman gets kind of impaled, is the idea, on this spike.
We don't see any impalement. Yeah, we just see her on the pole.
We just see her on the pole.
Yeah.
And shortly after that, the Yanamo tribe start to attack the crew because of basically raping the girl.
Yeah.
And
killing
then
her, putting her on display in such a disgusting way.
Yeah, that's right. And then that's when Jack, the blonde guy, is hit with the spear.
Yeah, because he jumps up on top of some area and starts shooting at them with his rifle.
Yeah, shooting at them. Yeah, fucking hell.
Yeah, and he gets the big spear into him.
Yeah, right. So they kill him and then drag him off. Do you know what? Like, what I liked about that bit there is this is the point where, because yes, they had the guns and stuff, but this is the point where it proves that they are not immortal. Do you know what I mean? So when the Yanamo tribe turn the tables. And once with Jack's death scene is so important at this point because they then go, okay, we can get these people, we can actually take them apart. And this is what you said. You see him get pulled off, and the penis being cut off, like you said,
and his eyeball out and everything like that. His head cut off. Yeah. And again, the idea of their systematic punishment for what had happened, like you know, or again, how you could be saying that interpretation of what actually gets happened to his corpse. Yeah.
Oh, and there's apparently, I forgot one bit there. Alan actually, so the director shoots Jack as well to stop him from escaping. No, yeah, apparently Alan shoots Jack to stop him from escaping.
From escaping?
Yeah, so that the team can then film how the natives mutilate his corpse. So he basically sacrifices the Jack. He only does it once Jack's been hit with the spear.
I assumed it was him shooting him, like, you know, out of mercy.
No, he does it to stop him from getting away.
So that they can. Oh my god.
Yeah.
And again, it's Exploitativeness that the director is now taken over and he's sacrificing now
that's
the
right.
other crew members.
He does, that's right. And so and this is what exactly happens. So the three surviving members are then trying to escape. And this is a bit like the Blair Witch bit that we see where we get them and they go around in circles and get lost. It's the same kind of thing that's happening here. And they don't really know how to get out. And then Faye,
flare gun that they think is going to scare them.
Yeah, that's right. And they're going to extreme measures to try and get away now. And Faye ends up being captured. And she's just kind of completely I found this
humiliated and raped multiple times, and then taken away and beaten, her entire body beaten, beaten, and then decapitated. But but again, even in this scene, it's so uncomfortable because again you know how awful it is for the actress going through this. And even from the first scene we saw with the the adultery death, with the wooden idol and the mud with the sticks or whatever during it, I was surprised that there wasn't screaming, as in there was moaning and everything like that, but it wasn't necessarily blood-curdling scream. And I was surprised, but it also added to how grotesque it was. Even relating back to that last scene where we see then everyone sort of the genitals getting cut off and her getting raped and everything, and then the beheading, which is seeing that you sort of can't help but think, is this real? How far is this going to go? And you're just on the roller coaster for that, and so it's just luckily towards the end.
We're about to go off that final precipice. So and you're right, and that goes back to the reason, I think I mentioned this earlier on, how when this was released and initially the director wanted the actors kind of out of the way to add to the believability of it, but it kind of backfired on him because when it was released in Italy and the censorships kind of slammed him down and got brought before the courts, he had to get in contact with the actors again and get them to come out and prove that they're actually alive. And all is well, at least with the humankind.
Exactly. There wasn't any real, there was fines and things, but no one really lost out in that situation, even the filmmakers, and that's part of the reason why there's still a controversy today, because whether that art was justified in what they did.
Exactly. And I guess we'll wrap that up as we come to our final thoughts on that.
Well, it's interesting enough, even because in that last scene, when you cut back to the people who were reviewing the footage, and they asked that same question that, we're discussing about this film itself, if it's enough justification to release this as art or as media for people to review. And it's easy to, I don't know, in the context of the film, they're saying this is tribal stuff, or at least that's what that is when they realize that it's people, making stuff up. But there's obviously certain rituals, like we were mentioning just before, that were real. So, exactly, that dichotomy of going, in that world, it's sort of, they are documenting natives doing what they're saying in some respect. In this, it's just literally filmmakers, a scripted thing. So it's a different issue to what they're asking in the film, but we still ask the same question. It just doesn't have the same weight because we know it's all been planned, and
that's right,
especially nowadays with animal rights the way it is, and human rights as well.
That's right. So it kind of lends, it would have been interesting to see this pre because we know it for what it is, and it fell into the video nasties and it had this reputation that surrounded it. By the time yourself and I have come around to watching it, it was already kind of buried in folklore. And so it would have been interesting to be one of those earlier kind of viewers of this film, and having never seen anything like that before on the screen would have been incredibly shocking and confronting.
Exactly. Especially with the parallels back to Blair Witch Project, because I remember seeing that and it being in my mind, is this real? Is it not? And it was filmed in such a convincing way that it turns your stomach when you think that's real, but then to know that it's not, it turns it even more
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so let's kind of look at the final bit here. So we've got the to kind of wrap up what happens with the filmmakers, as in the character filmmakers Yates and Mark. They're still pursuing it. Yates is very much kind of in a bit of a zenith state, and he's kind of just kind of remarking on how beautiful the film looks, and is really kind of carried away. And of course, that's when the tribes see them still filming them. So that's when they go on an attack to kind of hunt down and kill them. And then we kind of see this kind of scuffle kind of happening, and they kind of fall down to the ground, and we see Yates being attacked as the camera falls down, dropping from his hands.
Conveniently placed on his face.
Yeah, conveniently, exactly. Close up on his face as he's kind of like butchered to death.
Professional to the end.
And we see his eyes in his eyes we see the camera lens that's focused on him. So it's kind of like what he wanted to see reversed with what we're seeing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, even that old thing of saying that, what was it, our eyes capture our last memory or our last
exactly image. Yes, that's where I'm going with that. Thanks, Richard. So and that's kind of it. So that's kind of where we kind of end it. So obviously Mark and Yates are the final two, and they killed off, and we go back into the screening room, as you say, and we still have Monroe sitting there, and he's the one that's kind of just as a reminder, kind of got these guys to read, the executives to watch what he had seen, because he's basically saying, you cannot screen this. This is horrible and shocking. And we get that kind of conundrum where the three executives are looking on, and you can tell they're, from the way they're looking, they're completely shocked and appalled by what they've seen. And they eventually agree on Monroe's assessment. And one of them, I think, orders the film to kind of be completely destroyed and never shown again. And we get Monroe then walking out of the building, and he into what is into New York, before he looks around at the people in the streets, and he mutters, "I wonder who the real cannibals are," as he lights up a pipe.
Yeah. And then we get, you wonder at what point those sort of like add-ons were done in the filmmaking process. It's just like, well, we've copped a lot of flack for this. Let's add one little bit at the end.
Yeah, that's right. There you go. Yeah. So as I said, like one of those video nasties, and I think we prefaced this at the beginning. Now you weren't familiar to it, and before watching this one, and I feel like I'd semi-seen bits of it in the past, but never in its entirety. No. So for me, it was kind of an edge. I viewed it, and I think I said this as well, I definitely viewed it as an educational piece, watching it from a voyeuristic point of view, and it's harrowing, and it is confronting, and you could see that it was pushing the boundaries of taste, pushing the boundaries of what's credible and what's not credible at a time where film was probably at its most risky, or and it's part of the beauty of what cinema was about in those the late 70s and in this case right at the brink of the 80s, because during the 70s it was about that kind of guerrilla kind of shoot from the hip style approach to filmmaking that allowed great filmmakers to experiment with stuff. And this, I think, is the nth degree of how far to push yourself at the time, which is why it all the censorships kind of came out and it really laid down the hammer on this one. But from your point of view, having kind of watched it for the first time, what was your gut reaction from watching it?
No, like I knew of the cult status of it, and so I knew sort of, you had to have a heavy, sort of thick stomach to go in to watch it. But within it, was surprising how how emotionally swelling it was trying to involve us with what we were seeing. And it definitely took me on that roller coaster. It was that sort of thing, as we were saying before. It was like a car crash. You can't help but look. And as you say, from like a educational point of view too, like it's been talked about and it's still studied in universities. And I think it's important, especially for filmmakers, to discuss this film, even if you don't watch it. If you just can read transcriptions and what the internet, IMDb and Wikipedia have great information about it, to feel the gravity of what you should do with the art form. I don't know. I don't want to say should do with the art form, but as in the idea of guerrilla, as in filmmaking has its certain place, but you're still releasing it out into the world, and it's setting a precedent for what other people can do, should do, and what's decent to do as well. Because besides that, you can still tell this story without the brutal, the gruesome animal cruelty and nudity. There's other cuts too. I think it'd be interesting to see the censored cuts where there is no nudity and there's no cruelty in it, and whether or not the emotional roller coaster is still there, i.e. does the film still send the same message as the filmmaker was intending? But besides that, it was it's I'm glad I've seen it. I don't necessarily want to see it again, but it's films like this, like Requiem for a Dream, even though it's not not the same film, it's still an extreme sort of subject matter and the way that it's composed as a film is that same roller coaster. And that's what's so brilliant about film and art. You'll get something like, I'm trying to remember what the surrealist film by Salvador Dali is, the one where
not Un Chien and You, is that the one you mean?
It doesn't have a French name, and I should look it up right now, but in it there's a moment where someone cuts open a lady's eye with a razor blade, and they do it with a cow's eye and stuff like that. But again, it's that sort of uncomfortability, and then you've got the same sort of thing with The Ring, and after watching sort of horror films and that aspect, even though this, I don't know if it was supposed to be deemed as a horror film, definitely hits those same chords, and it's that sort of extreme stuff where it's I don't know, I'm glad I've seen it, but it's that sort of thing of going, how to recommend it.
Okay, well, look, that was going to be my next thing, wasn't it? I mean, I always ask this at the end of the podcast. Like, the two questions are like, does it still stand true today, and would you recommend it to anyone else?
Well, it definitely still has the same impact, I think, as it would have had back in the 70s. As in, when a lot of people say, it was a different time and stuff, every time is its own time, and we're still living the present to whatever capacity we can deem it fit in our brains. So within that, like, I still felt it was shocking, and whether it was made today, whether it was made in the 70s and it just looked like that or whatever, it still, I think, to me, would make me feel the same disgust where it was supposed to feel disgust. I don't know, the scenery, the music, that awe, like, as well, into it as well.
That's right.
The freedom as well, like, even besides that, and besides the whole moral idea about, as you were saying, guerrilla, this was a very free sort of film. They got away with all of this. It's the idea of, can you make a film like that now? Of course, anyone can make that. Can you release it? Well, you're going to have prosecution, because again, you're putting that up there. And so that's what I mean. Setting a precedent, it's the films that maybe don't get released or don't get the funding, that people might still be going out there and doing things that put either their life at risk, their actors at risk, or crew at risk, or just what they don't deem as a living entity as
that's
give respect to.
That's right.
But for a studying point of view, I think that for filmmakers, yes, I think that if you have at a university the ability to discuss this in film class, and especially with other students, I think that's really got to be a good, valuable point about it. And being able to listen to opposing views and discuss those views it just makes us as a society better. So it makes our work better too.
I agree. I come from, being a film lover and a cinephile. I feel like it's one of those movies that you should probably study, particularly if you're into the craft, and be warned that it is, there are shocking moments within it. And it's not, it wasn't just labelled a video nasty for the fun of it. This one does kind of fall, and like quite rightly fall into that basket. And I do feel like because of that, it is relevant, and it's still as strong as it was 40 years ago when it was released, which is again why we are podcasting on this one, for looking back 40 years at this anniversary of this film coming out. Cool. On that note, I think that's probably good for us to bow out on our discussions on Cannibal Holocaust. If you haven't seen it, if you're willing to push yourself and you're not too kind of I don't want to say shocked, but you aren't easily disturbed by some of the images that would be on the screen, then by all means check it out. But my reaction was that I did find it incredibly confronting. But do go check it out if you are.
Yeah, I think it's one of those ones where you got to read the box first.
Yes, definitely. Very much so. Cool. On that note, then we'll bow out for the podcast. Thanks for listening, as always, to our fellow surgeons out there who tune in regularly to listen to us rant and rave over the classic horror films, both old and new. I'm your host, as always, and lead surgeon of the podcast, Saul Muerte, and accompanying me for this particular episode was Richard Lovegrove.
See you later, guys.
You're listening to the Surgeons of Horror podcast. Music supplied by Peter Nezik. For more discussions or podcasts, head over to surgeonsofhorror.com or head over to our Facebook and Twitter sites for the latest news and updates.